continuing on with the Draymond Green drama, on a podcast this week with Kevin Durant, they discussed why they think the NBA regular season is not really that interesting to watch anymore. And so they called out major players like Anthony Davis and Gordon Hayward, who have sat out for like 4 weeks at a time. And with the sheer number of games, they said that it's just very difficult to sustain competitive and interesting basketball. And so, Ryan, as we're at this kind of moment in the NBA season where it's kind of a dog race, do you think that there's any validity to their claims?
100%. I think there definitely is. And we kind of have to right now pick at topics. We're going to talk about NBA in a minute, and there's some local teams, and there are real stories, obviously. It's not like nothing's happening, but we're at the dog days where kind of the interest is wavering. The playoffs are in sight, but they're still a ways away, and we still have some regular season games to play. I think the thing that they talked about is shortening the regular season, but I think at the same time, how is that going to get the players to play? Like, aren't they just going to sit out more? And that would hurt the revenue, obviously, because you're selling less national games, less tickets being brought in. So I do think it's a really interesting conversation. There's been a ton of projected ideas. One that I'm a huge fan of that I have to give credit. This is Bill Simmons' idea, is to add some mid-season tournaments, kind of, give us a break, maybe, halfway through the year, and have them count for, maybe double wins. So they really do matter, and it gets guys to play. I think that'd be a ton of fun, and there'd be a ton of storylines. And the NBA really is a storylines league, right? So, we'd be talking about the Suns getting hot. Can they make a run in the tournament and all stuff like that? And I think stuff like that is what we need to do. I think we need to be creative with the NBA, and Adam Silver certainly is a progressive owner. So I don't think he's going to sit back and let this happen. But at the same time, the players do have so much power where what's the incentive for Anthony Davis to play? They won the title last year. Him and LeBron clearly have rapport. They know how to play together. Why play at 95% when you can sit out an extra 3 weeks, honestly, just to get to 100? There's no urgency for them to play. The seeding really doesn't matter a ton in the NBA. We see every year there's typical 1 seeds that maybe aren't the best teams. They're young. This year, it looks like that'll be the Jazz, the Nuggets a few years ago. And when you have that happen, the teams that kind of coasted along that have the superstars, they'll wake up in the playoffs. And every year there's the conversation with, oh, well, they haven't played enough together. Are they going to be rusty? And we certainly saw that with the Clippers last year, right? Because Kawhi Leonard maybe is the face of low management in this NBA. He sits out a ton of games, and obviously they were bounced by the Nuggets. So I do think something has to be done 100%, because right now I am an NBA fan and I watch maybe a game a day or something like that. But there really isn't that much juice right now. We're past the beginning of the year where guys are up and coming. We know how good teams are at this point, and we're still waiting for the playoffs, and they are still a ways away. So I do think something has to be done. And I do give credit to Draymond and KD kind of acknowledging that, hey, it would benefit all of us if we make the NBA regular season more fun. So I do think something has to be done 100%.
Yeah, I think that what could be done is there could be more parity in the league. I can sit here right now, close my eyes, and open them, and it's going to be Lakers, Jazz in the Western Conference, and Philly, Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference. And if it's not, that's a big story, right, in the conference finals. So we can snap to the conference finals right now. We pretty much already know what's going to happen. It's going to be Brooklyn, LA in the final, or it's going to be Philadelphia, LA. This year, it's a little bit better than other years because there's Philadelphia and Brooklyn in the East. But, I mean, you talk about that run of championships. It was like, in December, it's like, why are we doing this? We know it's going to be Golden State, Cleveland. Why are we doing this? What's the point? So if you had other teams like, okay, for example, right, the Knicks are like a game in around 500, right? They've been 2 games under, 2 games over at 500 the whole season long. They're the 5 seed. They win 2 more games, they're going to host a freaking series in the playoffs. That's insane. And I think the easy comparison is the NHL because it's the same amount of games, 82 games, 4 7-round series. It's the same amount of games. But there's parity in the NHL. Different teams win. I mean, there's a team that just went back-to-back, 2016, 2017, the Penguins. But other than that, different teams win. Vegas, an expansion team gets to the playoffs. You can't just sit Sidney Crosby or sit Connor McDavid because if you lose that game, if you're Edmonton, then you fall down the standings. There's a lot of parity. Teams are closer together. There's no punishment for Kyrie Irving just leaving the Nets because they're still in second place. He spent 2 weeks away from the team and went to a maskless party at a club and then did it again, and they're still in second place. If Connor McDavid did that, Edmonton would be out of the playoffs. because all the teams below them would have actually won, but all the teams below Brooklyn stink. And the Knicks can't beat the one player on Brooklyn. So there's no parity. Every team besides like 4 is awful. And so just let's snap to the conference finals. Let's get it over with, because Kyrie Irving clearly doesn't want to play because he knows he doesn't have to.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's true. I mean, teams would not usually sit their best players for 4 weeks or for 2 weeks or whatever, because those games matter. But the NBA games don't matter. They're not important to their standings. They're not important to anything, because like you said, nothing is changing. Nothing has changed and nothing is changing. And I think that I personally have never been a huge NBA fan. I'm definitely more of a college basketball fan. And that's because I feel like college basketball players play with intent and they play like something matters to them. Whereas I think the NBA players, they have never played like they care that much, because, and that's not to say that they don't care, but it's just to say that they know that it doesn't really matter what they do. Like those teams at the bottom of the list, they know that they're not going to get up there. There's no incentive for them to play as hard as they can, because even if they win like 4 games in a row, it doesn't make any difference on their standings, really. It's not going to change things all that much for them. And so that's why I think I've always personally preferred college basketball, because they play with an intensity of knowing that their future is on the line. Like with the NCAA tournament, it's so much fun because these teams are playing with everything that they have, because they know some of them may never get to play again and some of them may never go to the NBA. And so they know that this is everything. Whereas the NBA, they're arrogant, they're cocky. They know that it doesn't mean anything. It's not going to affect them. They're going to get their paycheck by the end of the day. And I feel like there's such a less love for the sport, and that you can see that in players sitting out for 2, 3, 4 weeks. They don't want to be there. They don't love it that much. You know what I mean?
I 100% know what you mean. I'm a big college hoops fan as well. I prefer it to the NBA as well. But the one reason I didn't bring up parity as how we fix the regular season is, how are we going to fix parity? I mean, we're not going to let guys sign with teams? Like, I think we're in a super team era, and it's going to take drastic changes to change that. And I think kind of right now, as hard as that is to say, because Chris, you said you could close your eyes and count 4 teams. I'd go 6. I'd go Clippers, maybe Bucks. I do think at the end of the day, there is a lack of parity, but I don't know how that fixes the regular season. I think we have to embrace the parity for now and get these matchups to actually count in the regular season. You know, a Clippers Sixers matchup, that should be storylines in that. Doc Rivers coaching against his former team, his former superstars. Obviously, they've done some trades. Tobias Harris, former Clipper. You know, we have to get storylines, but those don't matter if Kawhi is sitting out. Ben Simmons takes a game off. There's no juice in those kind of matchups. And so I understand the parity argument. I agree 100%. It definitely is a problem how you only have a few teams. I'm not going to dispute that, but I don't see how we can solve that into solving the regular season, because stars might still sit out. Obviously, we saw LeBron a few years ago play all 82 because he didn't really have a super team in Cleveland. And then we saw a super team in Golden State dismantle him. So I do think that definitely would help, but I don't see a way we can just get these players to stop joining together. That's why I proposed the tournament, the mid-season, because that's the only way I can think of where it incentivizes these stars to play in their games, because the parity is a huge issue, but I just don't see a way we can stop it.
Salary cap. It's easy. I mean, there's no luxury tax anymore. I think, you know, there's pros and cons to both the luxury tax and the hard salary cap. I think you're seeing the cons right now in both the NBA and the NHL, who have the different formats. The cons are a team like Brooklyn, a team like Golden State can go $1 zillion over the luxury tax, when a team like Memphis really can't do that, and they can go they can go buy a championship. Where in the NHL now, the cap is stuck at $81.5 million for the next few years, and it's killing teams at this trade deadline. But so I think you're seeing kind of the cons. But if you really want to push parity, you just create a salary cap that you can't go over, and now every team is. But there's cons to that too. So I don't know. I think that if these games just mattered a little bit more for playoff standing, because they simply don't matter. Look at the Eastern Conference. The Brooklyn Nets are 8.5 games up on the 4 seed, with how many games? With a fair amount of games, about 20 games left. There's no chance Charlotte would ever catch them, the 4 seed, right? There's no chance. There's a 0.0% chance. If Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden do not play a single game for the rest of the season, they're not getting caught. They're going to be in the top 3 seeds. So what's the point? Why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think that you're right in that incentive-wise, it has to be money-based because otherwise, like, I'm not sure that it has to be a tournament because I don't know, maybe this is cynical, but I think that money is going to drive people to either want to be in their games or not. They're not taking any penalty by sitting out 4 weeks. Kyrie is not taking any penalty because he didn't want to play for 2 weeks. I don't think that his salary is changing. But if there was an incentive where if you sit out X amount of time for not an injury or something like that, that you get docked a little bit of money or something, then people might want to play. And that's just a cynical way of the way that I think that NBA players probably just want their money. But I think that that's part of it, is that they know they're getting their huge paycheck at the end of the day regardless. And I think that to create incentive and to create intensity and juice and storylines, you're going to have to include some kind of punishment system of it.
The only flaw I have for that is I feel like teams could just manufacture injuries. Like Kawhi Leonard, when he sat out like 30 games with the Raptors, they made up like calf injuries. They created new injuries for him. The one thing with the cap I'll say is I just feel like guys will take less to join up together. I don't see, there's such an appeal to join together and to create super teams and to win a title, which is the goal for most players. I think at the end of the day, I think you're seeing that I think that they will kind of find ways to get around that offload salary. And I don't know how that helps the NBA in that aspect because guys are making so much anyway off the field, right? The stars in this league are so big. Obviously, it's a star-driven league that I don't know if that is the benefit and if that is the solution, but they could toy around with that for sure. I think it'd be interesting to see if guys would take less. Like, would Kyrie take 18 mil a year instead of a max to join the Nets? Stuff like that. We have seen KD do that because luxury does, it does crawl up on you a little bit. But for sure, I think that is an interesting solution. And if they were to do that, which I don't think they will, because that would limit spending and would limit the money in players' pockets, I don't think they'd ever go for that. I think it probably would help just at least a little bit.